Yes. Want to start immediately so that we don't waste time and we're able to maximize the time that we have. Is good to it's good to see everybody. It's good to for the people that put on their video. It's good to see you. Good evening. It's evening in Nigeria right now. I don't know where you're joining in from. I know we have people from different parts of the world. So good evening. This is the first open business masterclass. For people who don't know about One Foundation is an organization committed to entrepreneurial development for MSMEs in Nigeria and Africa at large, as many places as possible. Our goal is to help businesses grow and become more sustainable so that they can eventually become socio-economic drivers, provide jobs, provide meaningful jobs for people and more. So we run the One Academy. The One Academy is our bespoke out entrepreneurial education. It's also another way. I think some people who are here might have heard about that already. I don't know. The application for BP is out. We'll talk about that at the end of the program. So for today, for this business master class, our theme is your business for the post-COVID-19 world. Preparing your business for the post-COVID. You know, COVID-19 was something that nobody else. It was a clear-cut evidence. And more like that. So we decided that our train entrepreneurs on how to think about the future that we're already going into, even though we were not prepared for it before. And our speaker is Mr. Oluwabunmi Ajilore. He's the founder and Foresight lead for the Center of Development Futures. He's also a fellow of the School of International Futures. I'll quickly read his profile so that we have an idea of who is speaking to us. Oluwabunmi Ajilore is a Foresight and international development expert with over 12 years experience working mainly in international agricultural development, foresight advocacy, and program management rules with GFAR, UNFAO, CTAU, CITA, and more. Bumi is a 2018 AILA International Fellow of the Center of Strategic and International Studies in Washington, D.C., and an NGFP Fellow of the School of International Futures in the UK. He's a Nigerian but has lived and worked in Latin America and the Caribbean island, Europe, and across Africa. For the other program, after this introduction that I just did, we'll go directly into the facilitation. Our speaker is already available. He has been available before 4 p.m. actually. So for the question and answer session, which is going to follow after the facilitation, our modality is going to be that you can drop your question in the chat area. You find the chat area if you look down at your dashboard, you see the place where you can see more. When you click on more, you should be able to, when you click on participants, then chat, you should be able to ask your question. Just drop in your questions when during the facilitation. Once the facilitation is going on, you have a question, just drop it in. At the end of the facilitation, I, the moderator, will be reading out the questions to our speaker. So without further ado, I wanted the introduction to just be 5 minutes, and I think I clicked on that. This is just 4 minutes. I would like us to welcome our speaker, Mr. Oluwabunmi Ajilore. You have the floor, please. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. It's good to be talking to you this evening. And yeah, so thank you for the introduction to So I've been asked to talk to you about preparing your business for a post and as much as possible, or instead of me just making a presentation or talking to you directly, I'll try to make it a conversational style. So be free to drop any question at any time you want, and as you move along. So as you've been told already, I'm a foresight expert, and I've done quite a number of work trying to help people to think about their future, the future of their businesses, the future of their organizations, and the future of their of the different entities they run, and even their own futures personally. So going into the main to our key discussion for today, which is preparing your business for a post-COVID-19 world. I'll start by saying that by defining what foresight means, and then why do we use it, so that what do I want to achieve by this is basically to lay a foundation so that you understand what you are about to, that this is not just like another theory or something plucked out of the sky or something like that. It's just something that you can use at your own level and can apply to your future, the future of your business. So in plain terms, like you probably can see on your screen now, foresight or future thinking is just what we use to describe what we do when we look at the future, when we explore the future and what the future might look like. And what do we mean by this? In essence, it is predicated on our ability to use the foresight to change or to try to adapt our future even before we get there. So quickly, why do we need foresight? One of the reasons why many of us are here today, and even from the theme of this discussion, is because we are all very keen to understand how to manage our businesses, or how to position our businesses in a post-COVID-19 world. So and COVID-19 itself has been a major shock for the world and for everyone involved. So why do we need foresight? Usually we do it for 4 reasons. We do it, and this is what we call in our parlance, we call it a VUCA word. VUCA basically means 4 things: volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. We can all agree that even before COVID-19, for a long time now, we've lived in a very volatile world when the rate and the pace of change has been very rapid. And then it's not just that this rate of change is quite rapid. It has also been very uncertain in terms of the outcomes of our actions and the actions of others, and how these are. So it means that even the familiar methods that we are used to are becoming increasingly unpredictable. And then in terms of complexity, means that complexity shows the enormity, and then shows the interconnectivity of our world, meaning that whatever happens in a particular country affects us all. For instance, if you're going to go back to the COVID-19, you realize that this started in China, and somehow, even though it started from a particular city in China, somehow the whole world has been reeling from this particular disease right now, and it has thrown the economy of the world into problem, so to speak. And then lastly, ambiguity. It means that for every action, there are multiple causes. For every issue we are faced with, we have multiple options, range of options, and potential outcomes. So we need to be because of these multiple outcomes that we have absolutely no control over. So how do we deal with when we're dealing with situations like this? How do we and this is what I mean, like, why do we need foresight? At the most basic level, a lot of times when people are dealing with change, the behavior for some people tend to be passive. And what do we mean by passive? That the behavior mean that when you're dealing with change, the kind of meaning you make out of that situation is to accept it, and then your course of action then tends to be to let it be, and then your strategy means to submit. And at another level, you see people who are reacting. When something comes up, they react. But at the level of force, to be passive or to be reactive. What we're trying to do, which is why you are all here today on this, listening to this, is to be proactive, is to try to anticipate the changes that are happening, to anticipate them and to explore them, and then to try to influence them in such a way that will be beneficial to your businesses. So, having said that, Foresight helps our businesses in many ways, but I'll just simplify it into three major ways. One is to help us to anticipate, to better anticipate. Anticipation means that the ability to be able to see from afar, to be able to understand the likely directions things may be going, and to be able to position ourselves as quickly as possible to be able so that we stay relevant in the future, and our businesses stay relevant and into the future, and could imagine the future. Beyond that, Foresight also helps us to innovate. How does it help us to innovate? Because in understanding the likely direction of things, we are able to know what are the new. As now, the COVID-19 situation has killed a lot of demand, or a lot of some kinds of businesses. So, what are the new opportunities that are emerging out of these? You could see that for some of the very agile companies all over the world, even while a lot of people are losing money, some few people and some few companies have been able to position themselves in such a way that they've been innovative, and then they've been able to leverage on this opportunity to innovate and then to take charge of their own futures. And then lastly, one major reason we need Foresight for our businesses is to be able to future-proof, what we call future-proofing, or our business ideas or our businesses itself. What do we mean by this? It is the ability to not just look at where your business is now, but to be able to look at where it will be in the next 3 months, in the next 4 months, when we emerge out of this situation, and in the light of all the kind of changes we'll be experiencing by that time, in terms of businesses, probably job losses, businesses crumbling, new opportunities arising, and all that. How do you position your business within that frame? And how do you, when you're thinking about the ideas that you use to position your business, how do you future-proof these ideas, so to speak, so that or stress test these ideas or strategies to know that to be able to have an understanding that they would likely work in the future. So, having said that, I'll quickly run out again through the objectives of this meeting we are having. And again, this is to guide small-scale and aspiring entrepreneurs to think about their post-COVID-19 future and to prepare for success. So, usually when you're trying to do this one of the things, and I've actually mentioned a few of them before, but I'm just going to do it in a more structural way now. What we call is to try to map. What we're trying to understand is what is the current pattern, what are the trends, what are the trends, what are the drivers that are forming the future, so to speak. And in understanding trend I know maybe one of the things we probably need to do is to try to actually define what is a trend. A trend is basically the general movement or the general tendency of movement of change over or direction of change over time. Right now, the big trend out there right now is coronavirus and COVID-19 and all the lockdowns and all that. And in understanding the trend and the drivers, then what you try to do is how is the trend influencing the things that happen around me, my environment, my customers, and all. Beyond that, you also need to look at anticipating the future, and it's basically very related to what I just said now. In anticipating the future, what you are trying to do is to identify the issues on ground and then to identify what is not. Let me use a pictorial example for you. In exploring what is changing, you're basically doing something like this, where you look at a change and then you are looking at if, for instance, in terms of coronavirus, if coronavirus is what you have in the center as that big change, then what are what you call the first order consequences of coronavirus? We can already see that. Some of the first consequences has been job losses for people, food prices and all those going up, and organizations and companies shutting down and all that. But then at the second order of consequences, then you now begin to understand what does this mean? What does if people are losing their jobs, what does it mean? If organizations are shutting down, then people lose their job. If people lose their jobs, it means there's less customer for the customer pool for you reduces. If the customer pool for which you and your competitors are within which your competitors are playing reduces, it means that the level of competition then increase. Then how do you position yourself in all that? So going back to where I was before now, then you also try to create alternatives in your planning. You do what we call scenarios. Scenarios are basically trying to look at the different pathways or different directions that things may go. That if things go in this direction, this is what I have to do. If things go in direction B, this is what I have to do. If things go in direction C, this is what I have to do. And this is how I respond to it and how I manage it. Having said that, and I then try to put together some of the key questions I think we should be asking ourselves, and I think we should be exploring particularly for this training. And the first question is, how do you think about the post-COVID-19 future? And when you're thinking, look at it from like 3, 4 to 5 layers. We try to imagine it from using 4 or 5 parameters. These parameters are the things that are the drivers that are influencing what is going to happen tomorrow. And then in drivers or parameters individually, you also try to understand how they are influencing one another. One is the economic drivers. Some of the economic issue drivers trends from what you have seen in COVID-19, like I mentioned earlier, is some of the economic trends we've noticed from COVID-19 is job losses, a lot of people losing their jobs, companies shutting down. You must have, if you have been listening to the news, many of you must have heard that there's likely going to be a recession globally by this year or. So what does it mean at the economic level? What does this mean for your business? You need to be thinking about what does this mean for your business? And then beyond the economic level, then you need to look at the political trends and the political driver or the policy drivers. How is the government in your state in your country responding to it. So because this is going to influence because when you look at what has been happening now, you realize that different countries have responded in different ways to it. And the way your country or your state is responding to it, and even within Nigeria, when you look at it, different states have responded in different ways. Why some states have gone on full lockdown, some have gone on partial lockdown, some have gone on, some have decided not to lock down at all. That level, at the different levels, it influences your business in a big way. So you need to understand, how is your state government responding to it? What does it mean for your business? You also need to add. Beyond that, you also need to look at technology. The technological trends out there now. We are able to have this meeting right now because of new technologies and all that. Meaning that even though we cannot congregate physically, the technological innovations that we have on ground right now allows us to be able to do this. So in making your decisions and understanding how to, and even in understanding the kind of decisions to make, you need to look at what are the technologies at your disposal that can help your decision making, or that your business can leverage. Beyond that, and then also look at what we call the socio-cultural factors. How do people? What kind of business do you are you running? How has the impact of COVID-19? What impact has it had on the socio-cultural mentality of people who patronize your business? For instance, now one of the things you must have seen is that for a lot of people who are in the tourism business, this is a very tough time, because now people cannot go out, and two, the cultural sense now is we now have a culture of social distancing where it doesn't make sense for people to congregate in big places. You could see many of the big malls now closed down and all that. So the new social cultural thinking is that of social distancing. And you need to factor that into your decision making. For those whose business are based on parties and all that, it's also a very, because when people cannot congregate, and the social mindset or the social cultural mindset is now that of staying in your own place, or trying to avoid as many people as you can, or not. A lot of people, the interesting narrative is people now saying that you don't need a big wedding and all that and all that. There's an influence. You need to look at how does it influence your business in that respect also. And going forward, so looking at that, we've basically just talked about what are the trends, how do you see or understand them, and what are the emerging issues, and that you need to be aware of or think about. So then we move to the third question, which is, as an entrepreneur, what should you be concerned about in a post-COVID-19 future? If you ask me to advise you on that, what should you be concerned about in terms of in the post-COVID-19? You should be concerned about your customers, especially if you are in a sector where either you're selling goods or you provide services. Especially if you provide services, you need to rethink the kind of service you provide or the kind of goods you sell, and ask yourself one of the key questions: is it an essential good? Are you providing an essential service that even when people are broke, they are still going to come to you? If you are not, then you need to start rethinking your business. And beyond that, you also need to think about your environment in the sense that within the environment, looking at the environment within which you are located, and looking at the environment where the traditional environment within which your customers are located, would they be able to still patronize what you offer going forward in the post-COVID-19 future, where a lot of people must have lost their jobs and there's likely an economic recession and all that. And then in terms of, even if people are still able to, if you're selling an essential good or you're rendering an essential service, you still need to rethink that in terms of your pricing. That what can people, how do you, for instance, if you're someone who, for instance, if you're a tailor, for instance, and you know that the rate of partying is probably going to reduce, then the question you should be asking yourself is, what kind of what kind of clothes would people need, even though they don't have to go to party, or even though the volume of, or the number of parties they have to attend, instead of the usual every weekend party, is now just once in a month or once in 2 months. So how do you readjust to take care of that and to plug that particular gap? Also, then, having said that, the key question then, or the last question then is, after you've looked at all those, you've thought about all these, then you need to then ask yourself that, what are your coping strategies? What are your coping strategies in terms of what are the skills or the kind of flexibilities of the kind of new skills or new flexibilities or actions that you would need to position yourself and your business? The thing I know you must say it again. It's going to be a totally different terrain when we are out of this. Already, we are in a totally different terrain because things have changed. A lot of changes people were expecting 5, 10 years down the line have happened in the last 2 to 3 months, so to speak. So you see now that a lot of schools are now coming online, churches are now coming online. A lot of things that you never imagined could happen before had happened in the last 2 to 3 months, so to speak. So now is the time to now sit down and think, what are your coping strategies in light of having analyzed your business, your customers, the environment, the location where you're based, the kind of customers you have, their purchasing power, their ability to be able to keep patronizing the kind of service you provide or the goods you sell, and all that. We analyzed all that. Then you now look at, so to speak, what kind of you must have, and what kind of flexibilities are you talking about, and what kind of actions do you need to take, so to speak. So to round this up before opening up the floor to everyone to ask questions they might have in mind. Say I try to come up with 3 to 4 things I think you should be doing right now. And then, like I said, I've mentioned the first one earlier, but I'm going to say it again. The first thing is you need to analyze the status of your business. You need to analyze the status of your business. You need to analyze your environment. You need to analyze you need to analyze the current and the likely impacts of COVID-19 on your business, on your environment, on your cost. Taking into consideration the economic angle, taking into consideration the social angle, like I've mentioned earlier, taking into consideration the political angle, the technology angle also, and the social angle. Don't forget the angle from the political angle and the policy angle. How are your leaders responding to these challenges? What is the economic situation in your environment? You understand? What are the social cultural reactions to these challenges in your environment? And then what are the technologies that you can leverage on to make things better for yourself in this environment, in that environment? And based on this, then you can now come up with your survival scenarios. What I mean by coming up with your survival scenarios is basically looking at if you notice, I did not say what is your option. I said, what are your options going forward? What are your options mean that in saying what are your options, what I mean, it means that you need to be flexible to take different roads or two different approaches, to understand that the approach that has always worked for you before now may no longer work. And going to my point 3, in coming up with scenarios for survival for yourself, means that you may have to pivot. What do I mean by pivoting? Pivoting means that having analyzed your business, your environment, your customers, and everything, you may come to a position where you realize that your business is no longer viable in the current environment. And in pivoting, you need to look at what are the new opportunities that are arising out of these challenges that you can take charge of, that you can make a business out of. Not every business is going to survive this challenge. You need to quickly reappraise your business, analyze your customers, analyze the environment, analyze all these and the likely impact from and all the key trends that, like I've mentioned to you, from the political angle, from the economic angle, from everything, and make a decision and understand if your business is likely to survive. If you think your business is likely to die, and in the process of coming up with a survival scenario for yourself, then you need to pivot. Pivoting basically means that you need to branch off into another thing. So you need, in analyzing all this, you also need to analyze the situation and look at, and this is one of the things I showed you when I showed you the small ball, and look at what are the challenges, what are the first order reactions of these challenges, what is coming out of these challenges. If people lose their jobs, what do they do? If people lose their jobs, a lot of them are no longer able to send, especially for the middle class, for instance, a lot of them possibly are no longer able to send their children to the fancy private schools. How can you make a business out of that? You understand what I mean? If people lose their jobs and they are at home, people who are at home and bored, what do? They need one form of entertainment or so, or they need this and that. What do people need when they are at home? You notice that even when a lot of businesses were shutting down, businesses like Amazon and Konga and Jumia have had a good time during this time, because they were able to leverage on people who are locked down at home, basically need someone to bring things to them. So they've been able to leverage on that. So you ask yourself these questions. What happens to people who are out of jobs? What happens to people who are no longer able to send their children to big private schools? What do people who are no longer able to go to their favorite restaurants and all that? What would be the alternatives? And then in asking yourself those questions, you are able to see new opportunities for those whose businesses will not be able to survive this pandemic. And lastly, for those who are in the beyond those who are in the service sector, for those who are providing services, one of the interesting things that has also come out of this pandemic is even the big companies in Europe, in the US, and across the world is what we call repurposing. Basically, repurposing means to adapt your skills, your equipment. Like I was saying, one of the things that has come out of this is repurposing. Basically, repurposing means your ability to adapt and readapt your skills, your equipment, your vocational skills, and your tools to be able for a different use or for a different purpose. Basically, it means that maybe you were a teacher and you were teaching in the nursery in a nursery school that shut down. Then instead of teaching full time in a nursery school, you basically turned your attention to providing homeschooling services to middle class people who are now out of jobs and cannot afford to pay high fees, those ridiculously high school fees for private schools. It means that you, for instance, let me use an interesting example. You see some of the big fashion houses like Louis Vuitton and all that in the last few months, being unable to do all the fashion, to come up with all the fashion designs and all that, you see many of them now providing fashionable masks, fashionable face masks. Some of the biggest companies, manufacturing companies in Europe, when they could no longer do anything, started manufacturing what do you call it? Ventilators, for instance, for hospitals. So it's basically repurposing what you have for not using it for what you were using it for, but to repurpose it for something else that has become an opportunity, a kind of new opportunity that has come out of this post-pandemic world, or that will still come out of the post-pandemic world. It is part of the flexibility you need to embrace, so to speak. So on that level, I would end. I'll end what this can.
Hello, can everyone hear me now? Okay, sorry, my audio was mute before. Yes, I was saying thank you so much. Thank you so much to our speaker. Thank you so much. I was thinking through some of the things that I was saying, especially the part that the future that the future that we were waiting for has happened to us. The future that many of us were scared of. The whole thing about losing jobs, technology taking this and that away, has happened to us faster than we think, and it's just closing up on us. It's closing up on us faster than we can imagine. Just to reiterate some of the things that you've said, you say you should analyze the status of your business, you should analyze your environment, you should analyze your customers, you should know what the current and likely impact of COVID is on them, and then you come up with scenarios for survival. Then you pivot if necessary, repurpose your skill. So now, I actually have a question that I want to ask, and I'll see if I get even more questions as we continue. Now, I want to create a scenario of you were using a scenario of someone who is a fashion designer the other time. We're using that scenario, and how the person needs to sit down and think. You sit down that, okay, people don't have opportunities to do ashwebi and all those things again. But the question I would like to ask is this: can you actually bring people to think in a particular way rather than you trying to think in their own way? This is what I mean. Can you